Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I am Taoist Master San Quinn, and we have a special guest here today on the podcast, my friend Kayden Dastrup, and we're going to go into the inner workings of his spiritual awakening and just his journey from where he has been, where he is going to, and where he is right now. Hey, Kayden, how you doing, my friend?
So good. So well. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much.
Yes, yes. Well, I mean, it's this is really what this podcast is about, which is identifying a consciousness journey and helping people become awakened to this realization that there is so much more out there than just what they consider their reality, their 3D reality. And so my friend, and we sort of became fast friends here a couple of weeks ago, and Kayden has got a really profound and very interesting story to most, and in most cases probably something beyond comprehension due to just where he is in his own journey. Is it capable? Is this sort of an experience that I believe is capable for anybody? Absolutely. Kayden and I resonate with each other primarily because I understand where he's coming from, and I experienced very similar things over 30 years ago. And when you start to just enlighten or turn that switch on, magical things happen, my friend. So why don't you share with the audience a little bit about yourself, where you came from, what you're doing, and how you really got here?
Yeah, absolutely. So you alluded to it when I was 30 a few years ago. I'm 33 now. So when I was 30, I was in a really bad spot mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I had gone like my whole life, especially my 20s, through college, through my early career, very not content, very just like living in a very fogged kind of 3D reality of always kind of chasing the next thing, get through college to get your career. Very normal stuff, I thought, on the surface. Doing everything I was supposed to do, all the things that I should do. Right. And I was not aligned with any of it. I didn't even know what aligned meant back then. I just wasn't very connected to myself. I could tell. And that leaked out into my personal life all over the place. From substance abuse to, lying and cheating. And I was just such a miserable person. But I knew that wasn't me, because every time I'd have like poor behavior, I would look at them in a vacuum and be like, oh no, that's like, that one thing is explainable. You're feeling bad or whatever. Like, right. One day I had to take a step back and extrapolate it and be like, okay, if I have 12 behaviors that suggest something, then I probably am that really, lack of a better term, shitty kind of person in this moment. And it was hard for me to stomach that because my heart didn't feel that way, but my behavior suggested that I was. And one of the best blessings in my whole life is when I was 30 years old, I broke my leg, just like snapped my leg in half. And I was playing golf. I just slipped. It wasn't anything crazy. But that forced me on the couch for several weeks. And it was right when COVID was kind of happening. So my surgeries got postponed, and I had some issues with my leg. So they couldn't get into surgery when I was supposed to. So I kept getting bumped back and bumped back and bumped back. Right. And it forced me to just sit. I just had to sit in my own stuff. And I was working a lot at the time. So I couldn't even hardly work. I was working like 80-hour weeks. I was just drained. I just had a new baby. I guess he was about a year old at the time. But I remember having to sit on the couch for just days on end, and I hated it. I hated it. It was just so much sitting, and I had so much guilt and shame and things I never even looked at. I didn't even know guilt and I had pushed everything so far down for so long.
Was it a big turning point for you? I mean, did you come from a different type of mindset? What I know you're right now. What would you define yourself as? A life coach or?
Yeah, so I'd say a mindset and transformation coach.
Okay.
Yep.
So
that's where I'm at now.
With that, and I mean, you've got such a profound story. Was that where you were at when you had this realization, or you're doing something completely different?
No, something way different. I was in corporate America trying to climb the ladder. Very corporate setting. I was working my way up, promotion after promotion. I wasn't settled until I got the next promotion. And that one was just for the next promotion and the next pay raise. And I think I'd already purchased like 2 or 3 homes, bigger house, nicer car. And it just was getting worse and worse and worse. And so, like I said, I break my leg. I'm forced to sit on the couch, and I didn't know anything about, like, I'd always been I like learning new things. I'd always learn just random kind of stuff that interested me. And I was really kind of big in the moment of kind of, learning about ancient civilizations and just kind of a way of life that was really old, but I'd never equated it to anything other than just me trying to learn new stuff. But now sitting where I know now, I'm like, oh, that was a pretty interesting gateway to what it took me to. So what I did is I promised myself when I was sitting on the couch after surgery and everything, and I was like, okay, when I can walk again, when I'm healthy again, I'm changing. Like, I can't do this. I'm like, I was really like, and this is, I'm going to jump right into it. This is a personal story of mine. So I'll just, it is what it is. I was like, I think I told you too, I was having suicidal ideations. It was just not a good time. And I told myself, okay, give yourself a year, try really hard, like go in, like whatever, I don't know what, just give yourself a year to try to be better. Cause this isn't right. It was eating at me. And I remember I'd heard about meditation. I'd never even really done it. I'd never looked into spiritual stuff. I grew up around religion in my neighborhood where I grew up, but it was not ever my thing. It was always kind of a toxic thing because it's very predominant where I live, this one specific religion. And so I kind of stayed away from it my whole life. And I'd heard meditating was great for anxiety and depression. And I was super anxious. I was super depressed. I was like, sure, I'll try meditation. And I think my third time ever like attempting it is when everything, like my whole life changed. Like it was just boom. I went in and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know set an intention, or I didn't know what any of this kind of stuff meant. And I didn't know, when you're tapped into something and when your attention flows or the energy goes, I didn't know any of this kind of stuff in the moment. And I remember sitting on the edge of my bed. It was like midnight. And I remember just like closing my eyes, and I could feel this sensation all over my body, like this buzz. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, I'm going to see if I can get that to be like more intense. This is what's going on, And I started getting like these chills and this rush, and like this energy was moving through me. And I was like, whoa, this is kind of cool. But again, I was really naive to it. I didn't know what any of it was. And I was like, I must keep going. And then all of a sudden I remember there really wasn't anything. I just kind of like shot off like into space. So I can describe it. It just like the top blew off and the energy just blew out. And I remember everything, like I only could hold that moment for about 15 or 20 seconds, 30 seconds before it really freaked me out. Because I was not expecting that. And I remember kind of like doing that thing, and everything kind of blew out, and I could see stuff and figures and things. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy. I opened my eyes, and then it was like the window of my bedroom all of a sudden shrank, got far away. And like my arm, I went to like touch the window, and that shrank and then kind of came back. And like all of reality was kind of like warping and changing.
That you thought was reality. That's it.
That I thought was reality. Exactly.
I mean, for the audience, you need to sort of put everything in perspective. This is something that has sort of been realized by Kayden within this reincarnation as something that is more, his sensory perception is heightened than the average person due to just the dialing in of the awareness. So, it's kind of like you don't know you can walk until you walk, right? You don't know you can run until you run. So for Kayden, he was sort of way closer to the tipping point than the average person that may just start meditating or getting into a spiritual practice. And that's where he had that tipping point, that realization. The biggest problem that people have, which they define as a problem when they're experiencing this stuff, is that they associate the experience that they're having with a physical modality, something that is related to WebMD.
Yeah.
So
that's 100% what my mind did. Yep.
Right. So you instantly go, I'm having a stroke. Maybe I'm going to have a heart attack. I'm having some psychotic experience where I should possibly put myself in some type of like padded cell. And this is all part and parcel, part of the experience in this realization. Kayden was just right at the top. And when you're right at the top, without the guidance, you can literally have this glimpse, which you were speaking of. It's like I held it for 20 seconds and I let it go. Understand this. Most people that do experience this hold the 20 seconds, then they go, I'm closing Pandora's box. Good luck. I'm never going to see that again, because they have no understanding of what's going on in the chemistry within their physical body, which is really an energetic response. It's like the Lamborghini engine is being revved up, and Kaydens kind of like, I didn't even know I had a Lamborghini. What's going 100%. On here? Right?
That's exactly right. Yep.
And so you had that moment. You had sort of like almost like a lucid sort of like trip per se. Hang on, my arms are stretching out. They're getting smaller. The dilation of your viewpoint, it's myopic, and then it's macro. Huge. And so what happened from there, my friend?
So I woke, like, that night was just scary, because again, I had expectations. I did not know what I was capable of, or what that power was. And like you said, it was a psychosis thing. Is this an issue here? Is there like a psychotic break that's happening? Once I was able to kind of calm down that night, it took me a few hours to kind of just get back to sleep. The next few weeks was, everything had come up out of me. All that stuff I said was kind of crammed down. All the fear, all the shame, all the guilt, all the whatever, everything kind of came back up. And I all of a sudden could not live that way anymore. It was not even a choice. I could not do it. Like, it could not happen the way that I was living.
Right.
So like the rat race, carrying that stuff, like stuff that was inside of me for so long that I forgot about even.
Yeah.
It had just all came pouring out of me. And I started to, and it took me a few months, but I got my feet on solid ground, and I worked with some different, groups and people. And for the longest time, I tried to figure out, what it was. And then I let go of that idea. And I was like, it doesn't really matter. Like, it's just semantics at this point. I'm like, there's nothing and everything that describes it. And,
well, it's really interesting that he says that, because you get to a point where, he's in a whole, you're in a league of your own. And I'm not saying that to be an elitist thing. It's just where he is in his transformation. So it's very difficult. Very few people can give you an explanation, if any. And at this point, this happened a couple of years ago. As far as I know, I believe I'm the only person that can give you a definition thus far in your journey. Correct. And the reason it's valid for me is because I experienced something very similar to, if not a little bit different, but understanding how fast it's like you realize you're superhuman. But this is also a realization for everybody. People need to grasp the concept that if you know how to turn this stuff on, it's go time.
Yeah, absolutely right. And it did take me a long time. And that's what I came to the realization of. Like, I had to let go of so much stuff. And it taught me, like, I'm really grateful the way that it happened, that I did kind of start like on maybe the wrong end of it and have to work backwards a little bit, because it's led me through so many different ways of confirming and not confirming what aligned with me over time, over the last 2 or 3 years. And I'm like, this does. I've gotten so good now at learning and catching it that I can move so quickly through stuff that used to take me months or weeks or even 6 months when this is first going on, because I was so tight and scared. And now I'm like, I'm like at warp speed almost now. Like, I think I'm collapsing timelines left and right.
Well,
because I can get in and get out and move it faster.
Oh, absolutely. It's an interesting realization. So, one of the incredible insights into this sensory perception that Kayden's speaking of is, I remember distinctly one of the first things that was an extra sense instantaneously was an absorption of information. So, I could look at a page and literally flick through a whole book, absorb all the information, 600 pages in a minute or two, and find the exact point of where the information was that it was of value. And that's because you're speaking on diving deep into a level of consciousness, and you can acquire the information instantaneously. Now, you can use it more as a tuning fork to go, this is where this is, and your guides, whoever they are, there's several, we can go over those, but they're giving you guidance to your refining of your attention, intention to whatever it is that you do. So the dashboard and the limits of what you can do are limitless. They're infinite, really.
Yeah. And that's been fun about the journey lately, especially the last few weeks working with you and talking with you and following the Way app. I had thought I'd had a pretty good, I was starting to feel pretty confident with like what I'd learned the last few years.
Right.
But now looking back, and again, all in divine time. I love the timing of it. It's been really beautiful the way it's unfolded the last
What
few
a
years.
coincidence. No.
Yeah, right. Yeah, what a coincidence. But it always works. It always works. That's the thing. Now I know, like whenever I ask for something or need something, or I'm in that space of like not even needing, when I'm just like, okay, this is what I can feel like I need, I get answers almost like instantaneously. Or the people that come into my life, almost instantaneously. When I'm ready for a new level up, I'm ready for a new perspective, or my awareness needs to broaden even a little bit more, or there's some new tools, there's some new ideas that need to come in. When I feel that tension, I just like lean into that now and like feel it. And then it comes like sometimes literally like within 30 seconds, even from external sources. It's all right there kind of all the time.
Yeah.
And I'd say a year ago, I was like kind of aware of that, but not how rapidly you can tap in.
Oh yeah.
And how much you can pull towards yourself.
Right. And I mean, being that magnet, understanding that, and then the ebb and flow of the universe. And when you synchronize yourself, and it happens instantaneously. Now, something that Kayden is sort of like literally tracked into myself also. You realize these things instantly, and that is because everything is moving faster than the speed of light. When you come to that realization, instant is slow.
Yeah.
Instant is a little clunky, a little analog, a little what is it, horse and buggy type of stuff. It's not a Tesla latest model, blah blah blah. We're talking about you big, and that's synchronizing. That's what it comes down to. And that magic of manifesting, healing, creating, or i.e. magic per se, is now has to do with the inner workings of your perception of your reality.
Right. And it's been useful, again, the timeline, because when I first kind of went through my awakening, I love the things that I learned and the information that I gathered and the insight that I got, because I was able to develop a lot of different kind of skills around it. And especially when it comes to like mindset or the body, kind of because I had to really ground myself. I had to get recentered because I felt like a frayed nerve when it first went off, and I didn't know what it was. Right. So I had to really focus for many weeks, many months on how can I behave in this 3D reality right now? Because I feel like an alien all of a sudden. And it was very out of this world to me, kind of literally. And I felt like I was walking through Walmart. I went to Walmart like a week later because I get some groceries. And I was like walking around. I'm like, my God, it felt like somebody had torn the roof off of the building and nobody noticed but me. I was like, guys, does nobody see like what is? And so that was like, again, debilitating for a little while. So I learned how to, I learned different things. I did the biohacking stuff for a while. That was kind of all the rage. And I still really enjoy some of these practices. And now I'm learning how to balance those practices with more the energy work and like being in 5D more often, more frequently, calling it in, being a better manifester and leveraging and using that energy and allowing things to flow a lot differently than they used to, instead of trying to wrangle stuff or squeeze stuff or force stuff in the wrong way. So I'm glad I have all that other stuff that I built the last 2 or 3 years with it, because I think they go together so well. And I think that's what I try to do and to teach people. That's what my program is about, is if they don't know, like I didn't know, they don't know what 5D is, they don't know what the energy body is, they didn't know any of this stuff, rather than having them blast off into space like I did, can we like help guide them along a little bit easeful, so they don't have to go through that exact experience, and help them learn kind of in a more analog way. Like you said, it feels very analog when you go the other way now to me. But can we ease them into it? Can we get them to learn some very basic ideas first? Some things that I wish that I knew back then, so we could work up to it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's really important for the viewers to understand. You get to a certain point, but source information is critical. So, Kayden's still moving through the process of realizing the magnitude of information. I remember distinctly, it was well in excess of 30 years ago when I turned on a high sensory perception of clear vision, and it is sort of like, basically, to realize it, to explain it to you, you literally close your eyes, click your fingers, and everything is now in, HD times 1000, and everything has an aura color to it. And it literally, the aura, I remember distinctly walking down the street, and the auras from myself to the person in front of me, because I didn't connect them, they were literally bubbles. So I could like literally bounce around from one person to the other, and they'll be like 6 or 8 feet away from me, but my aura would hit the back of theirs, and it was like bubble bouncing type of scenario. And you were able to see the color of their aura, and then, of course, more importantly, the inner workings of their mental, emotional state through the organs. And that that's, again, limited by nothing more than you. But that clear sense is really, really valuable and useful, especially in a situation like Kaydens, where you're working with people. These sort of like inner masteries will become very useful. I'll show you some practical applications in the near future here, and how to acquire that type of like clear sense, because that's where most people fall short, is direct source information. And so we need to get you familiar with your guides, so that the energy component is profound. Now there needs to be an understanding of direct source information, and that's a real sharpening of your tools. You know what I mean?
Yep, that makes sense, because it does feel like I have like a handful of it's like I have like a TV on in the background. So it's like kind of fuzzy, like there's some white noise, and I get some stuff, and I especially get it like when I'm in a session with a client, or even like my friends and family, if I'm talking to them. If I'm in a good space, I can really see the energy of like their words and their emotions, like moving, and how they're moving and where they're moving. And I can see where, like, especially if somebody's in a tough spot emotionally, I can see where the blocks almost literally are, and like where the information is missing, and like where the leaks are kind of happening. And it's like, it's really clear to me in that moment. And that's developed over time too. I've always kind of been pretty good at that. But the last 6 months, it feels like I almost, like I wait for a second, and then I can almost hear the information. The information's almost like told to me, and then it comes out about where the information is. And that's the thing that's been the most fun the last few months, is like really leaning into that and allowing that information to flow to me the best that I can.
Right. And I mean, I think we spoke on it before, but I mean, right now you have anywhere fluctuating between 7 and like 12 different guides that are hovering around you, constantly giving you direction. Now, whether you are able to perceive that in an audible, audible for me, like all my teachers, I can see them as clearly as you, and I can hear them as clearly as you. And that's a refinement of your sensory perception. But once you get that, all bets are off, because that
seems like a different.
It seems, but be very, I will just say this, be mindful to not limit yourself, because that's really, this is what it comes down to. And I would have to say one of the biggest things that entered the mastery of, and this is even beyond me training as a priest and all the ancient tools and practices that I've been trained in over the last 30 years, you have to take everything at face value. So when you can literally take things at face value, I mean, it's mind-boggling. I mean, just in point, I remember distinctly one of the first things that I was taught on my journey was distant healing. Okay, so you get the distant healing, and it literally, they're taking me through this training as a priest. It's like, okay, it's like a point sheet, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I'm looking at it. It's like, okay. And we have to take you through specific meditations to get you to an elevated level of consciousness. You have to train in these for several months before you'll be able to acquire the skill to do this. And so the thing that blew their minds was, I looked at the paper and I said, is that what you have to do? Because it's face value. Do this, do this, do this. you will heal someone from as far as you want or as close as you want their physical ailment like that. And that's basically, oh, really? That's as simple as that. And so you can't make this stuff up. But literally, I had a friend of mine call me over the phone saying that, and that back in those days, we have phones on the wall, with the the old-fashioned thing, the dial-up and all that kind of good stuff.
And you're cabled, you're stuck to the wall when you're on the phone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I'm like getting this phone call, and she's saying, look, I'm not going to be able to meet you today. I sprained my ankle. I've got all these issues, and I've just gone through this intensive instruction in my training. And I'm thinking, all right, well, they're telling me it's going to take me X amount of months of training to get this acquired state of consciousness. And she's like, I sprained my ankle. It's not going to happen. I'm like, really? Okay. Let me just try something. Because I was just like, oh, why not? And it was like, okay. She's sort of sitting there. What she described her ankle as the size of a bowling ball. And I'm like, okay, heal, wiggle, wiggle, heal, be done. And she just went, what the fuck? And literally freaked out. You could feel her energy reverberating and oscillating through the phone, which of course now we understand is just sensory perception. You're able to acquire that connection. And she absolutely blew her mind. And she's like, what is going on? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just using a technique that I'm in training for. I have no idea, and I mean, it's kind of like very much like how Kayden is. It's like, I don't know. I'm kind of like, I'm in the middle of this stuff. And then it's gone. She goes, it's gone. I said, what's gone? My ankle, my swollen ankle is gone. And I'm like, excuse me? What are you talking about? Because, we're on the old analog phone.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know what kind of witchery that you're into, but I don't have a swollen ankle anymore. And she got up and she walked back and forth and came back to the phone and said, I don't even have any idea that I even sprained my ankle, nor will I mean, it's literally gone. I can't explain it. It's gone. And I witnessed it with my very eyes. It's shrinking in front of me as you commanded it over the phone, like we're in some type of ridiculous movie. And I'm like, listen, I know about as much as you do. I just know this is the instruction. This is what I'm supposed to do. And so when Kayden has this moment of realization and this attunement, I mean, it's exciting. It's like, it's exhilarating. It gets you to a point where you're like, what is the limit? There is no limit.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. I love that. And that's something that you've really, what was that? Sorry.
That's just the beginning. I got 30 years of those type of stories.
Oh yeah. And that's one thing you've really helped me with these last few weeks is like, you confirm my experience, because nobody could confirm my experience. So I didn't know what was pushing, what wasn't. I didn't like fully trust it yet. Like I trust myself quite a bit. And I was very slow.
Right.
And the last few weeks, you've been really big on me ditching the fear, ditching some of the emotions I've been hanging on to. And once I was gave myself permission to do that, it does feel so different, so different. And now it is exciting, and I'm not afraid of it like I was, because I was like, this is, no one in my reality knew what I was really talking about or going through. And I didn't really have the guts or courage on my own to keep pushing that hard. Because the first time I did it, it freaked me out. I did it again too, like 3 or 4 months later. I didn't mention that, but I did it again a few months later. Also was just intense and kind of crazy. And I was like, a lot of it on accident. And now I've just, through practice and through time, through advice from yourself, and then the app was really helpful. It's fun. I wake up excited every day, and I'm like, holy cow, this is I get to go do crazy shit all the time. This is awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I put in those ancient techniques, which Nigong and Qigong, what you're being simulated in and training in that you don't even realize is a mastery of Nigong. That's within the Way 126. So you're evoking all this stuff that's going on with you, and these are skills that you're acquiring every time you expose yourself. And, you know, I brought this to people's attention. You do 27 minutes of the Way 126. That's like 8 hours meditating, 8 hours sleeping, 8 hours relaxing. And people are like, get out of here. No, do it, hit play, and you get back to me. And I mean, I think you recalled the first time you kind of like passed out on that one.
Oh yeah, the first time it was like lights out, almost like a few minutes in, and you kind of called me out. We were on the phone once. You're like, "Yeah, you're a busybody. You're like way up here, kind of heady, kind of going crazy all the time." Now I do it when when I start to feel myself slip out and kind of get into that space. I'll go hop on the app again, and I'll bring everything back down and like really kind of like zone in. And then I get off of it. Now I can do it, and I can because I do it twice a day.
Yeah.
But now I can get out of it and like are off the phone, off the app, and like for the next several hours, I feel like I can hold that I can hold that energy intentionally. And if I start to, I can recognize it moving now too, like leaving. If I start stepping out of that space, if I catch it, I usually can catch it pretty quickly within a second or so, and I can then bring it back in and then step back into that space and like hold it even longer. And I'm like, whoa, that's the really fun part for me, because I've felt it a lot, you know, over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
But it goes away kind of on its own, or I have a hard time recalling it intentionally.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where is that?
You're mastering it. Yeah. You're mastering you're mastering a technique and your ability. And this is what happens when anyone acquires the app and starts using it. That's a mastery. Now your sensory perception is very heightened. The micro dosing of the Way 126 equalizes people's energy centers so that they progressively move through. They don't have what someone would acquire. Your experience or mine is sort of like a Kundalini experience where, you know, it's so rapid. Like, you know, when I first started, it was literally, I don't know, sit down, get in a lotus position. I was still in the throes of having been in like bodybuilding and powerlifting for almost 10 years. So, you know, since I was 11 till when I was 21, I was bodybuilding. And so this is powerlifting and bodybuilding, and you've got this gorilla trying to sit down in a lotus position. And so when this particular teacher told me to now just quieten your mind and turn everything off, that's when the sound just went, and all of a sudden I'm like, whoa. Blammo, we have liftoff. And that's just the sensory awareness. But, you know, this is our journey, and it's not everyone's journey. And it can be their journey instantaneously if they choose to allow it. And then there's some points where, for example, yourself, where it was a fear factor of an experience where you couldn't identify or understand what's going on, and then it turns into, I'm having an episode. I could possibly be, you know, having a stroke, or dying, or a psychotic episode. And this is part of why a lot of people tend to move away from these type of awakenings, because they don't have an understanding. And and that's the biggest realization.
And I didn't. And I was lucky. My wife is incredible. She, again, didn't really know what was going on, but she like just gave me the space and didn't judge it. And like, as I was going through all this, she was like encouraging in a very loving way of like, well, you need to follow your instinct, follow your heart, pay attention, listen, allow, be aware. She just knew all the right things to say at the right time. Every time I was kind of freaking out or like having a strange part of it. And then even though I was unaware of what I was doing, there's still the voice in me that was like, you're okay. Like, trust, like, follow, like, keep going. It was quiet. I'd ignored that voice in my heart for a very long time. So it had gotten faint, but it kept egging me on despite the fear, despite the whatever. There was something inside of me that kept saying, like, keep going, like, keep going, like, keep going. And I just kind of followed that. And I think that was, otherwise, I think I would have shut the door on it and turned it off. But every time I went to do that, I was like, no, there's something there. I want to keep poking that fire, stoking that fire, see what that's about. Like, it's interesting. Like, what the hell really is this? And I was like, ooh. So that was always kind of there in the back of my mind. Even though I was going crazy, like on the outside, there was still that thing back there being like, you can do it. Let's try. I was like, oh,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the exciting part. And then you start to put things together and you get this awakening. You know, in my situation, it was like, again, it was kind of like a first time shot where I literally, the first official meditation that I ever did, it literally, I broke a couple of chairs and I closed my eyes. It was all realized. The Yellow Emperor instantly arrived, and I witnessed him sitting on a throne at the top of a fountain of golden, like liquid gold pouring down into this ocean. Now, the Yellow Emperor is the guy who founded China. And so it was crazy. And he's basically the one who started Qigong, all energetics within Asia. And his mastery of that was from his communication with the universe. So I immediately had him teach me. So I was like, I've got this formal, teacher in this physical world that's kind of given me, the foundations. So I'm like, I got direct source to the guy who created this stuff, who was like up
That's
there
amazing.
with, and this is all just part of it. And it's really important. And I always stress this to people. Source of information is critical. And, it's a progression, it's a progression thing. We're going to work with Kayden here until he gets his dialed in acquired access. And that will be dependent upon his calibrating within this space, and this is accessible to anyone. I always want people to know this. I mean, I teach people channeling. It's completely obtainable. The problem is people fear it. They fear, well, I've seen The Exorcist. I've seen, well, yeah, so have I. I've actually exorcised many people in my career, and people are like, excuse me, what is going on? I'm like, no. I mean, one of the founding fathers of one of the first monasteries that I was ordained at as a priest in China, his name is John Dal Ling. He is a famous exorcist. That's what he does. And then on top of that, this is an 1,800-year-old monastery. On top of that, his teacher is Lao Tzu, the founder and the guy who created or was transcribing the Tao Te Ching. He channeled Lao Tzu, and Lao Tzu gave him all the information to create his monastery in China. Now, that's great. Sometimes I reach out to John Dal Ling for any sort of like assistance, but I work with Lao Tzu every day. Loud as clear, see him like I see you, and we have fluid conversations about anything and everything that I need guidance in. And it starts with sort of like the system, right? So you have a system where you're following the system, which is the way 126. It's the same thing. I start my day. I get directives from Lao Tzu, the three pure ones. They tell me how to formally orchestrate what I'm going to do with the day, what's going to happen to the day. And at the end of the day, I come back around and report to them what I've experienced. And then they give me more for the dreamlike state where we start going into deep levels of realized sort of like magic, dream magic, whatever you want to call it. And so this would be more formally identified as lucid dreaming. You know what I mean? So, I mean, all these things are just variables that people have. And it's like, when people look at me and I have this conversation, I'm like a matter of fact, because this is my job day in and day out. It's not even a job. It's my realization, my manifestation, my life. And people are like, you did what now? Say what? And, it is it's a journey that everyone has the ability. But when you mention channeling, people recede, they run, but yet when you understand that all thoughts of your mind are not yours, and you're going around all day long. Now, what inspires you to drink a Coca-Cola or eat a hamburger has nothing to do with someone else putting a thought in your mind. I mean, and that's the realization. This is the problem that people don't want to accept, is they're operating on someone else's agenda, and they're getting that by being a product of their environment, which moreover is what I talk about when I talk about epigenetics, is that you are a product of your environment. So your thoughts change your reality. You can switch on and off your gene expression with your thoughts alone. So that's where the mastery of the energy comes in. Because when you master that energy, all of a sudden now I can move it anywhere I want in the physical body. So I want to move it to the core of the heart and increase the amount of nitric oxide production. Blammo. I want to increase oxytocin, blammo. I want to increase DMT, blammo, growth hormone, testosterone. Anything that you can imagine that is in the construct of the physical body can be manipulated or controlled by this, which really comes from this. So it's like that mastery continues, and it continues to develop. I mean, I'm very excited for you because, you know, I get these cycles where they bring people into my life. You know, I have, and I'm not referencing this as you are a friend that I am helping, but I do personally have, over the last 30 years, several disciples that I share information with. Now, that's just part of the expression of what I do. This is a one friend to another giving you guidance on how to acquire your enlightenment. That's kind of where it starts and ends. Oh my goodness, he said disciple. No, he's not anywhere. He's not even close to being a part of anything other than his own realization and belief system. Ladies and gentlemen, ladies, hear that very clearly.
Yep.
But I don't release the secret sauce to anybody. It's very few.
And one thing you said a minute ago that really was profound for me was realizing that you kind of mentioned it when I was telling you my story, what I thought my reality was. The limits I had put on myself and my reality, those were falling away. So I was seeing beyond the limits.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what was like, made me all scared. And I'm like, oh, that was self-imposed. Like nothing is damaging, nothing is breaking other than my self-imposed limits and laws and things I had put a box around. And when I lean into that more, I'm like, oh, cool. How far can we actually push this out? How far can I? Because they want to keep like my mind and my body like wants to keep rebuilding these new like limits. But every time I break a new one, I'm like, no, just keep going. Don't rebuild a new limit. Like this is where it goes. This is like keep pushing that out as far as I can. And when I realized that, I talked about this the other day on my Instagram, where I was like, really what had happened was the mirror of my reflection got shattered, not this. Like the true self, nothing happened there. What I thought was me, this reflection is the thing that kind of got shattered. And I was panicking over a broken mirror instead of like taking a step back, like, oh no, I'm good. Like this is all.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that's an interesting analogy, really. I mean, understanding that is for you, for most, and I'll just say this right now, they're like, what did he say again? What?
Yeah.
And then it will be a passing. That will go on deaf ears because of the simple reason that they're not experiencing the profound shift that you're having. And that realization is available to anybody. I want people to understand this and hear me clearly. When you are able to acquire the sensory perception, the other things will start to happen, but you need to get a grasp, just as Kaydens getting a grasp of the innate surge of power that he has access to. We all have access to, and the fear will always be the stopping point. So when you come to channeling is the fear. I can say safely every time I mention that, you recede a little bit. It's a lot to deal with. It's a lot to deal with, and I can see that emotion come up. The fear is evident, and you know that's okay. That's where you're at. At some point, you're going to go, you know what, San Quinn, I think I'm ready because I'm sick and tired of getting secondhand information from somebody else. And
it's happening. I can feel that
moment. When you have that moment, you'll go, okay, I'm done. I mean, 30 years ago, when I brought the Tao Te Ching to my mother, and I said, I'm not a religious person. I never was, as far as I knew in this lifetime.
Yeah.
So it's like, hang on a second. I'm not even close to realizing that. And my mother's like, listen, when you were 4, I took you to church and I didn't like you sitting in Bible study. So I removed you from church, and that was enough of that. And so most people have this tainted view of like organized religion. And then next minute they're very jilted, and they don't want anything to do with the idea of. And, that's very sad, because a belief system is important for everybody, no matter what it is, whether it comes from you believing in a religion, or it comes from you believing in yourself, or it comes from you believing in someone else's belief system. That is upon you to decide, to discern what is the value, where do you resonate. And that's why the sensory perception, the kinesthetic response is so critical. and you get that directly from the commander in chief. That's where you understand whether you resonate with something or you are repelled from it, from the feeling. That's why it's so critical. You must feel it. And people are like, I understand that. I get a gut feeling all the time. It's like all this terminology you're talking about, it's resonating with me. I cannot understand why all of a sudden it just synced in my mind that everything you said makes sense, because you've been using it your whole life and probably lives before this one. And now it's become full circle of realization.
Yep. One thing I love, that one thing my wife and I kind of say to each other all the time is, there's things that like, it's one thing to like know, like think you know, like, oh, I know, but then it's nothing to like to know.
Right.
Like,
right,
oh, like
right.
I know it, like in my heart. Like that's that difference there. Like, oh, there it is. Like being like download, like it's like a puzzle, a jigsaw puzzle just like clicks into place. It's like ding and like settles in. It's like, oh, click. Like that's that feeling. And I've had to get really quiet and really still to pay attention to those. Like I said, because I abused that, I ignored that for so long.
Right.
And now it's nice to like have that back online to be like, oh, click, like there it is. And I use it all the time, like every day, all day long. I'm using opportunities. There's dozens of opportunities around me all the time happening all at the same time to feel that or lean into that or step into that. Even regular day-to-day stuff. Like it doesn't have to be crazy.
Oh, everything.
Like communicating with my children in traffic, at the gym, whatever I'm doing. It's like I can feel that and use that to see where it's pulling me to. And like I'm trying to strengthen that muscle.
100%. It's like that. There's two things. There's only two things. You're either thinking or you're knowing. It's one or the other. So if you're thinking, it's over. You're not in your source aspect of default. Does that make sense? So
100%.
if you're thinking, just let it go. It's not going to be of any value. The information is not accurate. I mean, but I go down to, as much as I go to Home Depot, I get out of the car, I will pick the appropriate, shopping cart that has the right aura and the right energy on it. So it's like, I'm not, it's integrated into everything. I will pick the appropriate salesperson that is not having a bad day, because that energy is unnecessary for me. I don't have to do anything with it. I'm going to charge them up and give them another happy-go-lucky moment just by interacting and engaging in my field. It's a pick-me-up. It's a little charge. So you can see when you see someone who's looking a little bit more somber, melancholy, sort of like you can see they're on the verge of depression. Pick them up, and I like to charge people up and give them a little happy-go-lucky juice or sprinkle some fairy dust on them, and all of a sudden it's like, man, I was having a bad day until I talked to you. You're welcome. You're welcome. That's how it works.
Yep. I love that. And I think too, to make things sound a little bit more approachable for some people, if they're confused by what I talk about, or like you said, sometimes I say things that maybe don't quite resonate appropriately. We do this all the time. Like people are doing this all the time, and they're maybe just not aware of what they're actually doing. But like that is exactly right. People, they notice the waitress at the restaurant, so they leave a little bit larger tip. Or somebody's walking to the front door, to the gas station door, and they hold it open for them. Or they give somebody a compliment, or they give somebody a smile. Like we notice this stuff all the time. Like we truly feel it constantly. We're just maybe unaware of what that actually means or is, and we're not out there consciously doing it like consistently, like maybe like to the level that you described you're doing. But I'm like, you're doing this all the time. And synchronicity is like, it sounds, really big and mystical sometimes. I'm like, no, like, have you ever called somebody and they're like, oh my God, I was just thinking about you? Or like somebody text messages you and you're like, oh, I'm just going to text you. Or like, I wonder, like, oh, I really like white BMWs, and a white BMW drives by. It's like, that stuff is happening all the time. Like you can see it everywhere around you. It's not this crazy concept. And I think when you recognize it those first few times in those little low stakes, easy way, it's a really nice little kiddie pool to be like, oh wow, this is happening. Like, cool. Can I pay attention to this more frequently?
And I mean, and that awareness is really profound. I mean, it brings me to, I think in the next week or so, I'm going to do a group transmission for all followers on Instagram. So Latsu wants to just charge everyone up, and that's quite an experience. Definitely something I would suggest you attend if you have the time to. But it's an amplitude that is second to none when you are in it, because he'll blow your roof off. It's kind of exciting. So all I do is I'm a catalyst, a conduit. I just come in and, in most cases, I'll be honest with you, your interaction with me is always of a general seed that's coming from him. So you're probably talking, in most cases, you're talking to him. You may get my personality once in a while, and I like to flex that, but it doesn't linger very long. It will dissipate very quickly. You can splash it in there here and there, but the resonation of the true source is always present. And so that's where you're able to capture this ability to get into that 5D state where you're altering things, what you consider real time or instant, but it's actually faster than light. You're removing it faster than light, so it seems instantaneous. But you can alter matter, wave to matter to particle instantaneously, and it doesn't matter what it is. Oh yeah, that's right, my friend.
Yep.
And this resonates with you, and I want it to resonate with the audience and understand that you are 1 second away from that realization. And that's why the way 126, as Kayden has mentioned, he's using it, is so powerful, because it lays the groundwork for that exact realization. And you prime your nervous system so that when you receive that kinesthetic charge, it is instantaneous. You're in that state. The brainwaves, I don't even have to. This has been created. I mean, I created this a long time ago, but it will evoke a gamma alpha theta frequency like that. And so that's where you're like, man, I'm highly conscious and I am juiced up to my eyeballs, because you're now go time. You're now manifest, heal, magic, whatever you want to create with this, which is really this, is going to be realized, because you're able to feel it. That power is second to none, and it's available to everybody. And it's just about laying it out and laying that framework out so that it turns on, and it turns on appropriately. And that's one thing that that does microdoses very well. It turns on each energy center once a week for 9 weeks. But you can attest to this, and I'll ask you, you can feel it immediately the second you hit play. And that's the thing that blows people's minds. Is like, I haven't done anything. I just went and hit play for the first time, and I feel completely sedated, high as a kite. I don't know what to do. That's the effect of you having this human body. This neurology is a register to give you that.
Yep. I can feel it now too, if even just thinking about it. Like, I'll pretend I'm even doing it. Even like before we hopped on, I was like, okay, kind of like thought about it in my head, like just felt it, that feeling before I hopped on the podcast. And I was like, I felt just douche. I was like, cool, that's the place I want to be for this conversation. And one thing that really,
oh, go ahead.
Oh, really? I was gonna say one thing that really resonates with me that you say a lot, and I've heard it before in different ways, but it hasn't clicked the same way, was when you say personality. Like personality and not, I was like, I think people talk about that, right? With like the lower self and the higher self, and the ego self and the non-ego self. I think there's different ways to describe the same thing, but that one's really clicked with me, because I noticed like when personality Kayden gets in the way, that's when we do stupid shit. Like that's when we start falling off the vibration. That's when we don't hold the vibration. Maybe he, used to drink too much or do whatever. When Kayden gets the steering wheel, it's like, who knows where he's going? He's reactionary. He's unconscious living everything. He's just kind of like accepting everything as it is, but in the wrong way. And like when Kayden can move to the passenger side, it's like, there's freedom and peace there. Like Kayden doesn't have to make all these decisions. He doesn't have to do all this stuff. There's information that's useful for us, for me. And there's pressure relieved, taken off of like Kayden's, personality shoulders. It's not about him. It's not about him. It's about everybody else and everything else.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful realization that you have, my friend. And that's a simplicity of understanding this. I want people to realize that, this identity, schmedity stuff, and dig deep on your emotional state. And really, we need to find out why daddy didn't give you 3 cookies when you were 5. This is the mistake that people make initially, because they're trapped in the mindset that they're very limited. And I always refer to people, if you're in the state of physiology and you're in the state of psychology, you are limited. You are not consciousness. You're not oneness. And that means that you have access to everything instantaneously. It's not about what's the foundational framework. You're using the physiology. We're using the physiology as a register of your consciousness. It creates the brainwaves. But if you actually sit in the fundamental foundations of, I'm thinking, I'm learning this, I'm thinking that, then you're making a mistake, and that's okay. It's where you're at. I'm just like, as we always speak on this and we talk about this all the time, it's like your grandfather used to say this, your dad used to say, hey, don't do that, Johnny. You're making a mistake. And you didn't listen to him. And then 20 years later, you're like, I remember when Dad told me not to do that. And I could have learned from his wisdom, and I chose not to. And so, it's one of those journeys that human beings make. Now, once you access your consciousness, you're absent of that. So, I always remind people, when you believe you are not of this body, what can harm you?
Right.
When you know, when you know, all bets are off.
Yep. And I did that for the first year of my journey, because I got through it all. Like I said, I started just looking at, I was an information, like I was just overloaded with information because I didn't know what was happening. So I took everything in. And I was like, okay, like healing journey and blah, 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 and child, inner child work and shadow this and shadow that. And I spent so much time rolling through that. And after like 6 months, I was like, fuck this. Like, this feels like, it feels, I could do this forever. I could do this forever. Exactly. I could like go back and look at every single rock in my past forever. I'm like, that's
the trap. That's the trap. So you can, the big realization, the awakening is your personality is for you to experience this physical body, to enjoy it. Understand this, know this to be true. You can take it on and off like a pair of underwear. That's it. And when you come to that realization, and that comes from the neurology and that go time, because some people, if they're not able to decipher or discern the information clear enough, it's much faster to go to the feeling. The feeling will set you straight. And then you're like, okay, I recognize the feeling. I'm there. I don't have to wait for something that may not be developed at this particular moment, where I'm getting a clearer audio that's very clear. So instead of me deciding what information is coming in or not coming in that is correct, when you feel it, I'm there. Wow. Okay.
There it is.
Go time. In a story.
And I would find myself, every little emotion that would come up, I would play that game with for weeks on end sometimes. Some would take me 2 weeks, 3 weeks to figure out, where'd this come from? And why am I feeling this? And maybe when I was 13 and I didn't get picked for basketball, And I'm like I said, I played that game for 6 months, and I learned some interesting things, but I was like, this isn't it. Like, this is it. This is, I finally was like, I don't care, because it's not moving me. I don't think I'm moving. It's not moving me forward. I feel like I'm actually getting stuck in the past. And I'm like, I'm not in the now. I'm not present, because I'm focusing on what happened back then that's making me do this thing in the future. And I'm like, that feels like the opposite of what I should be doing.
Yeah. Now there's a moment, like, for example, I'll take you through this. When you say, hey, San Quinn, I want to do past life readings or future or whatever you want, you let me know, and we'll go through the past like 9 that you've had up to this point, and you'll have a mind-blowing realization that is second to none, because those pieces all come together and they're realized within who you are right now. So the last 9 lives are all components of what you're doing right now in this lifetime. And then you go, oh, wow.
That's amazing.
And and it's really cool, because when I do these, you can sit there, develop, depending on your clear senses, but let's just say you close your eyes and I'll take you through it. You'll feel the whole experience, but you'll also see it in your third eye.
That's cool.
That's part of the experience of that reading. And so you'll know when. I'm not going to say, hey, look, let's do this now, Kayden. You'll know when, but you're still ironing. You're rolling out a little bit of the fear there, my friend.
It's still going. It's been a big priority of ours the last couple of weeks, and it's definitely worked. It's like, I am surprised I'm even already at this point, and I'm really happy and excited. But it's there's still some there. I can feel it every once in a while. It kind of pops up, and I'm like, oh, what are you doing here? And I kind of let it do its thing for a second, and it's like, okay, whatever. And I can move around it, but there's still a little that leaks up from time to time. The last, I don't know, I'd say maybe 48 hours. It feels like it's kind of like you said, ironing is a great way to put it. It was like this big balloon at first. And like, I feel like I'm slowly like depressurizing that balloon. And there's still, I'm like squeezing, almost like when you have like a sandwich bag or something with a hole in it. And like when you squeeze it really hard, it almost like takes the air longer to get out. You're just like squeeze. It's like pressurized, but you're just squeezing. That's what I feel like I'm doing to the fear, is just squeezing that bastard like empty.
Yeah. I mean, people get a little freaked out when I talk about channeling, or I talk about you want to experience something like the presence of God, and they're like, oh no, thank you very much, I'm good. And again, everything is an energy, frequency, vibration. There are no exceptions to the rule. People have no problems categorizing that if they go to church, but they don't want to experience it in their lounge room, talking to Taoist Master San Quinn, and here we go. It's a whole different realization, and that's okay. You get to a dose. Like you didn't have to microdose as much the energetics, but the higher resonation of the actual spirit, you're taking your time on that one.
Yeah.
And that's okay. You've got a component that's a very big component to your own evolution, and that energetic component is huge. I mean, I have people travel across the world to train with me to even acquire a spark like the one you've been living in for the last couple of years. Now, when you know how to train someone in a system like that, you can acquire this sensory perception very quickly. Like I would say that I could have someone up to the level that you're at within, maybe 1 or 2 attempts, and you turn it on. But it's like, you also have to realize that very few people are Pac-Man like you. And when I say Pac-Man, I'm referring to the video game Pac-Man.
Yeah.
Because you have to absorb, you have to be able to sustain and absorb that type of energy, frequency, vibration, and it's a lot. It's like imagine you're sitting in an electric chair and you're sitting in it, and someone turned the switch on and it's not turning off, and then that kind of level of magnitude is huge, and so people don't know how to handle that. So it's always good to microdose them.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a great point, because that definitely was the hardest part the first 6 months. And that's why I did get into the kind of physical stuff, like make sure like my nervous system I could relax my nervous system kind of at will, or I'd learned how to, exercising differently, and sleep was a priority, and hydration became my priority. Like just making sure the system, like the physical system was like, could sustain the volume it was getting, because for the first couple of months I was exhausted. Like I was just physically dead for like weeks and weeks and weeks.
Right. Well, I will let you know, just a little caveat, a little spoiler. That limit is just purely by your perception, like whether you have water or not, food or not. If you're eating kale and you're running 100 miles a week and you're lifting weights, it means nothing. The degradation of your very essence can happen instantaneously just by what you believe in.
And I realized as soon as I said that, I was going to get that in front. As soon as I said that, I was like, oh, here it comes. Here it comes. I knew that as soon as I said that. That hit me like a ton of bricks.
Because that's really the misconception. That's the fallacy that people operate in when they get into the spiritual space. Well, I don't even like using that word because it's so common now. The spirit tells me, the spirit. No, I'm very clear of which energies, spirit or energy I'm communicating with, and I'll give title to it. I don't need to say the spirit, right? But I mean, that's my personality, ladies and gentlemen, just in case you're not clear. It's just sort of like a level of impatience when people don't understand that, that is the entry point, and it's that quick that you can literally access that. So you can eat all the kale salads you want, be completely vegan, be completely carnivore, be completely in the state of exercise, eating all the right foods, supplementation, and watch yourself absolutely ignite and burn out in seconds if you attach yourself. I've over my decades of doing this, when I deal with people that, like, for a common one like cancer, you'll have 2 people with the same problem. They're confronted with this emotional state that has been so stagnated within their physical body that they can no longer run and hide. They can't get away from it. So now it's mutated and transmuted into a physical ailment. And then you're like, they both have cancer, same cancer. I'll beat it. I'll beat it. Same words, same action. At face value, you look at the both of them and you're like, okay, well, they're telling us they're going to beat it. One day, 6 months later, one person is here, one isn't, because they didn't believe it. And that is the critical component. Words that come out of your mouth mean nothing. You have to absolutely vibrate with that. So that's where we talk about the energy, frequency, vibration. You have to actually vibrate with it. You have to resonate with it, oscillate with it. That's why the feeling is critical. We must have the feeling as a validator to the truth. And that will always be the default, and you'll never, ever, ever be wrong. Even if you never hear the clear sense or clear audio, and you're just using the commander in chief by using the vibration, by the energy itself, you will never be wrong, ever, ever.
That reminds me, I saw this video recently of Eckhart Tolle talking about Jesus, talking about manifestation, and it reminded me of that. Where, and this is, I was wondering, is that it's not like what's it going to feel like when I do or if I get it, but it's like I already have it, right? It's already like the vibration of that's the belief you're talking about. Is this is what it is. I believe this is how it is already,
right? And
it's
that's
that vibration.
Where, right, and that's why the 126 is so powerful, and that's where you get to go, hey, I can think about it, and it's happening because you're training in it. It's sensory perception now that is attuning you to that frequency. And now that you got the neurology and the energetics down, now it's time to raise the bar to the spiritual awareness. It's a whole nother ball game. And when you get there, I mean, we're already all bets off, but now you're in the major leagues. Major leagues.
What do you think is the major separator there between that energy and that spirit level? Like, what is that? What is that kind of like barrier people put up?
The separator is you, right? The fear is you. I mean, that's really what's going on here. I mean, I could take you through a immersive experience that will switch that on instantaneously. Yet your resistance, not that you could stop it, because if I started the train, it's going to keep going. The question is it my position to push you off the cliff? No. I could. We could do it today, but that's not what I'm being told. My teachers are not allowing me to push you. I mean, my personality is like, push you. Push you.
Yeah.
I mean, have you ever seen that movie, The Program?
I don't think I have.
It's like James Caan, and it's just about a football team, a college football team. Anyway, it's just the whole mentality and mindset of athletes and how it's the American way, and it's like all or nothing, baby. The old-fashioned foundational stuff that built this country. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
That
Absolutely.
stuff that we love and we resonate with. If you're into understanding how valuable this country is, that resonates with you. Anyway, so it's that mindset where I'm just like, it's go time, a game. And that's where I show people. And that's why the app is so powerful, because people are like, oh, bloody blah, I did this calm app. I did this, I did that, I did whatever. And I went to a retreat, I did all this stuff. And then I came across the Way 126, and this stuff is the real deal. Because that's what it's about. It's like, I'm going to show you. I'm not just going to go like this. You're going to experience something you've never experienced before. Now, it's really never experienced before. It's really experiencing again. It's like you're refreshing something that you already know, and it's in the core of you. And it's like, hello, here we are. And it's time for you to be reignited with that understanding of who you really are, the power and source of who you really are.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that resonates deeply, because I remember I told my wife when I first started that app, when I first talked to you a couple weeks ago, I bought into it really quickly because it had felt like it was like a major deja vu, where I was like, oh, I already know this. Like, I already know this. There was not even a question in my mind to do it or not. There was no skepticism. As soon as I downloaded it and opened it, I was like, it hit me like from the back to the front of like, oh, I've done this. I know this. This is a thing. Oh, okay. And it was like, here we go. Cool. And I was just all in right out the gate, because it was really fun, actually, and kind of like really comforting. That's one thing was hard to find for the first couple of years of my journey, was some of that internal peace. Because I didn't know which way to go, right? I was very confused and whatever. But so many things have happened the last year, especially the last 6 months. It's so freeing to feel that internal peace and to have that buy-in to be immediate, and that knowing just click. And I'm like, oh, cool. There's no thinking. I don't have to like kill my brain over this and analyze this and do a pros and cons list. It was just like, oh, beep, you know this. You've basically already done this. Here we go. And I was like, oh, amazing. Sweet. Let's go.
Yeah. And I mean, that's that beautiful part, is igniting that. And we all have it. I want the audience to understand how powerful it is that we all have it. And the limit, I repeat and I'll repeat again, the only limit is you. So when someone goes, if you come across, and this is probably, and I'm going to be psychic right now, but Kayden has gone through this for the last couple of years and never resonated with anything because they wanted to squeeze him into a certain box, a certain mindset that had to be created for him to take on a system. That's not what we're doing here with the Way 126. Yes, these are ancient Taoist practices, but they're there for you to stimulate your own experience. It's not for you to go, Kayden, welcome to Taoism. No, that's not what it's about. Yeah. This is about a system. And that's why it resonates with you because, hey, guess what? When I'm doing this, I know I'm going to get an outcome. When I do this, I know that I'm going to acquire a mastery, a skill from the experience itself. And that's something that most people are concerned about when they get into this whole space of meditation. What does it mean? I mean, if you go to any of these apps, they do the same thing. They're like, here, we've got some recommendations. Have, this celebrity give you a story time, bedtime story, and have this person tell you this, and then you'll get a guided meditation from this guru, and then there's words of wisdom from this guru. And it's like, that's really great. But where does that measure on my experiential moment of realizing what value have I got out of this and where am I going with it? What am I doing with it? Is it, am I acquiring a skill or am I just putting a Band-Aid on for an hour or so and then I got to go back to the real world stuff that then go, okay, I can't be I'm the sage walking the world looking for my enlightenment. And that's the problem that most people have. And so then they've been programmed with the digital era of social media and cell phones and everything else. So now they're finding it more difficult because of the way they've been trained. Their attention is very limited. That's like refreshing who they really are is no, you can access anything at will and you can be attentive for as long as you want at will.
When it feels old, like that's what's nice about it is it feels old. Like it feels like when I feel it, I feel into it and it kind of comes up. There's nothing like, it's almost relaxing because it feels so natural. There's no like, I'm like, oh my God, like there it is. Like my system almost like wants to, like everything relaxes and like tension in my shoulder and my neck like goes away. There's no like I said, I'm a classic overthinker. I've always relied on my cognitive abilities at work and I always considered myself, quote unquote smart. Yeah. And now there's I don't have to do any of it. There's not that. There's not that. And I'm like, whew, this is nice.
No, I mean, it is. It's an interesting thing. I get a lot of doctors, Harvard grads, Ivy League sort of like geniuses that are like, I know everything about everything. And then when they come to the realization they know nothing, then they know everything.
Right.
And that's kind of like, you are definitely at a certain point, that's the thing you need to stop. When you're too smart for your own good, which you do a lot of, you're like, I got that. I got that. I got that. No, I got that. And that's the dangerous
100%.
part of
way
where
dangerous.
You stop yourself from your own expansion. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely does. And that's something I've always, I used that as like a way to like perceive like fake value, project personality, project value out to the world. Like, look at me, look all the stuff I know, look how smart I can be. And I can learn things and I know stuff. And that's where people liked me. Like I'm likable, right? Because I know all these weird factoids and all this stupid shit that's actually pretty useless. And that was a big identity personality thing for me. That wasn't the me. And like letting that guy go too, also been really relieving. He still likes to hang on sometimes. But I'm like, no, you can move on. You're exhausting. Like, go away. Like, you don't need to be the know-it-all factoid guy 24/7. Like, oof.
Well, you're going to be super dangerous when you get direct source, my friend. And I say that excited for you.
Me too. It makes me excited. I feel my heart like beat like in anticipation, like in excitement. Like I feel almost like there's a little embrace happening, like a little hug of there we go.
Yeah, because that's really, really powerful and everyone should have direct source. And, the amount of times the internet lights up when I say the truth is only what you believe. And then you get these authoritarian dictators that get on the thread and go, this is the problem with social media today. These people think they can just say or do whatever they want. I'm like, Yeah, you kind of can. Remember, we're living in a country where
Yeah.
the First Amendment is kind of critical. The idea that you're self-regulating because someone's telling you you can't say what you think, yet we're subject to so many people telling you how to think, do, or say, which is the first
Right.
mistake. Lao Tzu will tell you this directly. No one gets to tell you what to think, do, or say, ever,
Mm.
ever. That realizing that you have the power, you are the source, and that this is the truth teller. Always. Always.
That's a big one. I like that one a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it's realized, and for someone like you can quantify it with the power of the energy that you're harnessing. And this is where people, that's why the refining of your skills with the energy is critical, because then you can start really discerning situations. I'm repelled from this. I'm drawn to this. I know this. And that's where you were like, when Kayden first started, he was like, oh yeah, I'm into it. And then you spent probably about a day or so going, what did I do? Did I make a mistake? What? Because it was so intense. It was like, hang on, I just immersed it. I didn't think about it. I just did it. And that's where you need to be, my friend. And thankfully,
I just went in. Oh yeah, sorry. Keep going.
I was just going to say, thankfully, your wife is so incredibly wise. She was just he explained it to me as, okay, sweetheart. I don't know what she calls you, honey, sweetheart. Listen to yourself. It's good. Don't worry. It's all good. That type of profound unity that you have with your wife is the type of essence and core unity that I share with people when I do any type of integration of any sort of marriage or anything of that nature. I did a wedding a couple of weeks ago. I get people to understand this is a oneness. When you go on that, when you engage in that moment of unity, as sacred as a marriage is, you're in a whole nother ball game. And so to have that type of support that you're getting from your wife, that's profound. I know
It's
that
amazing.
very well because I get that from my wife, Jade. It's the same profound stuff, and it's second to none. And it made it a hell of a lot easier for you to go, okay, I'm going to do it again. I'm not going to freak out. I'm not. Nope. I'm going to go back into the lion's den.
Yep. No, she's supported. I mean, every single day, every single step of the way, every little moment, she has the exact right thing to say every single time. And sometimes I kick myself because in hindsight, I'm like, oh, my wife, her name is Callie. She's been saying this to me for 6 months, and I've been missing it. I've been like, again, knowing it, not knowing it. And then all of a sudden I'll click and I'm like, oh my God. So now I'm like tuned into what she's telling me. When she tells me stuff, I'm like, oh, this is like direct for me in this moment all of the time. And it's like this really great flow. She's way into it and tapped in. And when I started doing the way, like I said, that second day, it was intense. I was like, oh, here we go. Cause I kind of blocked it out a little the last few months. And I turned it back on again. And it was like that fear, like you mentioned, almost right away came up. And then I've let that guy go. And then there was like some impatience, and my thinking brain was like, fast forward. I'm like, no, we're doing this, baby. Like we're sitting in it and we're doing it. And like you said, the electric chair, like we're just going to buzz into that. And now I feel like I can't get enough of it. I'm like, I just want to
I mean,
all day, every day.
And it only gets stronger. And that's that realization. It's only going to get stronger. It's like, I promise you, I've got like people that I've worked with for the last 15 years, and they continually come back to me every single week going, I just thought I had an epic idea of what max was. And it continues to go up higher and higher. And I'm like, because remember, everything is abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. There is no end. I mean, I can give you the factoids of what, physicists talk about today, right now, in white papers that have been released, peer-reviewed studies just recently in the last couple of weeks, or I can give you the knowing that I have as a Taoist, as a ambassador for the universe. Let me tell you, it's always there.
It's always there. That's amazing. And yeah, I was not as accepting of that. Like I knew it, but I wasn't like, I didn't believe it, or I wouldn't buy into it, or I wouldn't whatever. In the last year or so, I've really tried to step into that power of that and that allowance. And then especially the last 3 weeks, like just allowing that to just rip through almost like a wildfire. Like let the allowance just like rip through. And I'm like, hey,
And
cool, hands off.
one of the big things you can always use this as an indicator, and you checked yourself. The old expression, check yourself before you wreck yourself. It's like, oh, well, I just want to fast forward. And no, every time, whenever you think it's too slow, it needs to go slower.
Yep.
And so I've never been in pursuit of any particular type of like acquired mastery. Like whenever the three pure ones take me through my daily training, whatever it is, over all these decades, it doesn't matter what it is. I could sit and go sphere off into like telekinesis or other clairvoyant sense training, and it doesn't inspire me or excite me. If they tell me to do some type of training or they give some training to me, that's one thing, and I'll stay with it as long as they tell me to. But sometimes I'll have people, okay, here's the Tao Te Ching. I need you to go over this 9 verses, and they're like 10 months later going, I'm still doing the 9 verses. I'm like, have they continued to morph and change on a daily basis? Yes. There you go. I don't need to speak on it anymore, because you understand that is a living scripture. You are constantly moving with the ebb and flow of the universe. Nothing is stagnated. Always remember that. You will never, ever. And that's where you lose your level of consciousness, when you go, I've done it all. I've seen it. It's like, this is the same. You look at this mic and go, I've seen this mic 1,000 times. Actually, no, you've never seen it before, not from this angle. And consciousness is like that. Imagine a sphere. All you're doing in consciousness to elevate your consciousness is take that sphere and you look at it this way. And then I'm looking at it this way, and you're looking at the way you're looking at it. And we're all in that same conscious creation that is the universe, and that oneness is your realization. And that's all it is. You want to level up your understanding of it being that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think that was one of the major things I had to realize. Hey, sorry. Actually, can you give me a second? I feel like I'm going to be like really sick.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. My stomach just like, look at my feel pellet. Give me just like 1 second. Sorry.
Yeah. The energy is strong, my friend.
Actually, I'm going to like hang on to this for a second, but maybe edit this out. But yeah, I was like,
that's a huge shift from your yellow court, right? So that's where a lot of the emotions stay and they resonate before they start moving out into, and you just had a huge purge right there.
A huge one.
It's still purging. It's purging right now. You can associate it with like a diaphragm, like vomit, or you can now release the energy and just put your attention to it, let it move through you, and you're going to be solid, But I mean, this is how
it's dissipating.
Oh yeah, I'll help you along with it if you're having difficulty. But the bottom line is this is what emotions do. You're having a physical effect. This is how powerful they are. That's where you got that surge right now. You got a massive shift through your yellow cord, your diaphragm, and that was like blammo. And so all that is being transmuted. You know what I mean? It's real. Ladies and gentlemen, this is very real. And this is where people sort of discern the whole energetic component. Oh yeah, it's energetics. It's not real anatomy. Everything's energy. Everything.
Yep. Wow, that was intense for a second.
Yeah.
I feel a lot better. It's mostly like dissipated. I felt it. Yeah, it was here and it came out and it's gone all the way out. And it's like,
and so what happens is when you're around a vibration and frequency, so you're getting used to your energetic body. Wherever I go, I'm like a plutonium dump site of energy. So if you either move into the energy and go up in frequency, or you have something like what you just experienced. And now you're going to open up even more and level up.
Even more.
Because there was a dramatic resistance that was going on. There were a lot of mixed, as you would say, mixed emotions that were literally being purged from you.
Yep. And that felt amazing because I loved what you were saying. And I was like, I almost got like in a trance where I was like, oh yeah, I love that. I love that. It just kept like hitting me. And I was like, ooh, and I was like turning, like you were turning the thing. And I felt myself turning my reality like in my head. Yeah. And I was like, whoa, you could look at the same thing 1,000 different ways over and over and over and over and over and over.
Never, ever. Yeah.
I did that in my head. And all of a sudden that's when that hit. Like it just like, I felt this just like, dude. And I'm like, whoa, I was like, I'm going to be sick. Like, I didn't want to throw up on camera. I was like, I think I have to go throw up. And then you're
Yeah,
like, you can
yeah,
release it if
yeah.
you want. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I can. And I felt into it. I was
Yeah.
like, whew, let it go.
And that's that parallel where we get like in our heads where you want to believe it's a physical problem. It's not. This is way higher than that. It's a higher frequency. And what I will say to you, other than you're welcome,
Yeah,
you're
thank you.
welcome,
Yeah.
is realizing that that could have very well transmuted into something that turned into a physical thing. So this is something that the audience needs to realize, and how powerful thoughts, emotions, and feelings are, because they encapsulate into something that transmutes into a physical ailment.
Yeah.
And you know,
Well, I very well could have. Had I kept my mind on it, I would have definitely gone and thrown up.
yeah, yeah.
Had I
yeah.
kept like thinking that,
Yeah.
it would have turned into something physical for sure. If I like
And
focus that energy there.
Well, what I was not alluding to, but directing to, is that is now being released from your physical body. It could very well have transmuted into something that was far more fatal than just you throwing up.
Oh,
We're
gotcha.
talking about transmuting into a physical issue that affects the whole ebb and flow. I don't know whether you saw my latest podcast. Go and watch it, because it goes into the inner workings of the energetics within the organs.
Okay.
And so you might want to check that out, because that gives people an understanding of what happens to the energy, and how it will turn into a manifestation that you're not so happy with, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and like autoimmune diseases and stuff, is that kind of like play into that?
Oh,
is
yeah,
that kind of
all of
chronic illnesses and chronic diseases.
all of it is. All of it
Gotcha.
is, right down to oppression, depression, possession. I mean, we can go there. People tend to get labeled in a certain sort of psychological state, as opposed to understanding where they're stuck within that cycle of a trapped energy source, that in most cases the energy centers are locked in, and it's unable to have that energy flow that then transmutes into what they would consider a disorder of some kind.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And it's kind of brutal that way.
Yeah. And I can see that. I can see that. Wow.
Yeah. So I think we went over a lot today.
A lot. Yeah. Feels good.
Yeah.
I got something out of it. That was nice. I got something. That was great feeling that go through.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Understanding how quickly things happen, and know this, ladies and gentlemen and ladies of the audience, your mastery is one thought away, which is really coming from here, but you think it's in here. The truth teller is here. And that realization turns you into a game changer, and what you're able to create and manifest in your reality. That's the beautiful part about it. And, this is a ride that Kayden is on, and I'm excited to witness it, because it's only going to become more and more intense. We'll have him back here on the podcast in the next couple of weeks or months, and he can give us an update into what he's realized, where he's at in his own journey, because that makes you a more refined and sharpened tool for your mastery, and then of course being able to share that with others, which is really what drives you, which is
that's my whole goal. Feels like I can't not do that. That's like what I'm like supposed to be doing.
And you have a great sense of that. It's a beautiful thing to witness.
Thank you.
And all people need that type of like assistance, and that refinement of their attention, so that they're able to really translate that into a realized manifestation of their own making.
That feels good. Thank you.
You're it's exciting. It's kind of funny, because whenever I come across these types of experiences, it's like it's as fresh as it is when it happened to me, but that's kind of like the old expression, right? And it's just really exciting. The difference is most people are like, oh, the honeymoon is over, you can't go back. Oh, yes, you can. You can simulate and replicate an experience and energy instantly. And that is part of the mastery.
That makes sense. That reminds me of something I've heard you say before. I've heard others say it, that like your brain doesn't necessarily know what's happening like now or past or future. Like when you can bring that on. So it's like, why wouldn't you be able to create that same kind of environment for yourself?
Exactly. And when you start to realize you can access that energy, frequency, vibration at will, bring it in, and then alter wave to matter. You know, when you see, you know, physical flesh wiggle and transform before your very eyes, then you know you're on game time.
Yeah, that's wild.
It's a whole nother deal. I mean, I was just talking about it on the podcast with Jade, and she grabbed a curling one of those hair irons that she was doing her hair with, and you know, it's like $300, and she was like, "Oh, I dropped it," and she grabbed it with her hand, like this. And so, of course, you know, what do? It's go time. And I'm not sitting there going, hang on a second, Jade. I need to get into the lotus position. I need a couple of incense. I need to call in my magical helpers. I need the energy to be present. And I need to know that I'm in line with the universe. You access that. And it's instantaneous. And her hand was swelling up before our eyes. And in the same second, as I accessed the energy light information, it basically retreated, and you watched it witness your hand, and it would just shrink back to nothing. So the flesh went from pink down to regular flesh and blood. And this is just something that we all have the ability to access. It's just a matter of being able to get to that state. And that's what happens also, and why you're like, oh, I can just access the 126 instantly, even when I'm not doing it on my phone. It's crazy, because your concentration and the power of that concentration becomes more and more evident. So it's laser focused, that something that you may have, and for you, you're an exception, but generally speaking, say someone just started the way 126, that they went through the first 27 minutes every day, that would be getting smaller and smaller. So even though they're exposed to that material, their ability to access those energies is instantaneous. Just as you say, I think about it and, oh my goodness, it's happening right now. And so that's a mastery. And that's part of accessing that five-dimensional reality and being able to shift matter into wave.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's been fun. That's been on the forefront of my mind lately, is being in that mindset, holding that belief that you mentioned earlier, is believing it and not limiting myself and not limiting these ideas, and making sure I'm not putting up boxes and borders around certain things, and allowing my belief to carry that forward, and I'll carry that, you know, into kind of like that kind of circle.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing, my friend. You look like you went through a car wash right now. You're brighter than you ever were. I'm excited.
Thank you.
I feel
that was a crazy experience. That was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, and this is just the world we live in, and that's the exciting part about it. It's like every second I'm grateful. It's like the first time. And that gratitude doesn't come from, oh, I read that Hallmark tells me if I'm grateful, I'm going to have amazing things happen to me. And if I take the shirt off my back and I give it to everyone, and I have nothing more than my bare flesh and blood, that I'm going to be graced by the presence of a divine essence. No. That's not how it works. The universe doesn't have a moral compass. Whatever you resonate with, equal to or greater than, is your belief system. Understand this, know this to be true. And when you get to a higher state of consciousness, you cannot fight your personality. Your personality just fades away. And it's not due to you punishing yourself. I'm a bad person. I'm thinking this. I'm doing that. I'm thinking this. And it just comes with energy, frequency, vibration. And it's like everything is as one.
Yeah.
That's the realization.
And that's what's rapidly increased for me the last couple of weeks, is that, like I said, that personality piece. Again, it's something I understood conceptually, but feeling that difference, like that space between the two, but then the oneness of them both. And you're like, whoa, okay, this is like, that's been fun to experience and slip into, and then be like, try to hold that. And then I feel it slip out. Like I said kind of earlier, I'm getting a little bit better at navigating that, like in the oneness of the separation, if that even makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Perfect. I'm glad
All
hanging out
right,
the
my
audience,
friend.
but we'll see.
Well, this
Okay.
has been amazing. The audience is going to get so much out of this interaction and this great story of yours, and just a realization of how anything is possible. And you're a validator of that, and that you can access these frequencies, these energies of vibration, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. It's just the beginning. And
I appreciate it very much. Yeah, thank you for your help. Thank you for walking me through that energy release a minute ago. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, brother, we have just got started. Let me tell you this. Know this to be true. We have just begun.
Okay, thank you. I'm excited. I'm excited. Thank you.
All right, Kayden, it's been great sharing this with you, my friend, and we'll catch up with you in a couple of weeks, a month or so, and get an update of where you're at. And I'm your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master Sun Quinn, signing off, and I'll see you guys on the next one.